It was not until 1810, however, that a canal commission was actually provided for by the legislature. It included, besides Morris, Clinton, and DeWitt, William North, Thomas Eddy, and Peter B. Porter. In 1811, Robert Fulton and Robert R. Livingston were added. A thorough exploration at this time produced an estimate of cost of a canal to Lake Erie at $5 million. Morris and Clinton were sent to Washington to endeavor to obtain support from the federal government, but President Madison was not favorable to the use of public money for this purpose, and the committee returned to New York disappointed. The scope of the canal enterprise was rightly considered national in character, while Madison and Monroe were solicitous that the canal be built. As strict constructionists, they believed that no aid could be extended without first amending the federal Constitution. Governor Morris urged that the federal government should build the canal, and its operation and control should be regulated by treaty between the state and nation. In this proposition, we see the then conception of state sovereignty and how lightly the bonds of union were regarded, and also observe that the question of the regulation of interstate commerce was early brought into prominence. The general welfare clause of the organic law had not yet been elaborated. The War of 1812, with its burdens and responsibilities, eliminated the federal government as a possible builder of the canal. The agitation was continued throughout the state, especially by Clinton after his defeat for the presidency, and in June 1812 the legislature passed an act authorizing the Canal Commission to borrow money and accept grants of land preparatory to the beginning of work. But borrowing money during the war was out of the question, and the progress of the enterprise halted. In 1816, Governor Tompkins strongly urged that the state proceed to build the canal without further delay. A new commission was created with Clinton at its head. Further surveys were made, and more elaborate estimates of costs prepared, which included connection with Lake Champlain as well as with Lake Erie. The width of the canal was to be 40 feet at surface, 28 feet at bottom, and the depth 4 feet. The estimate of cost was $5,442,813. On April 15, 1817, the legislature terminated the long speculation by actually authorizing the construction of the canal, creating a canal board consisting of all the executive state officers except the governor, which was given power to borrow money on the credit of the state. The canal fund created was to be under their charge. The Clinton Commission was continued, charged with the duty of construction, operation, and maintenance. The division of authority soon caused difficulties which resulted in vesting the power of both in a differently constituted board created in 1826. The patronage of the canal appealed to the selfishness of men and involved in its construction the vicissitudes of party politics, engendering the fiercest political and personal animosities. Clinton was not above using the patronage to regain and promote his political prestige, but above all things, he devoted his energies to the success of the canal. He boldly made it the issue in the gubernatorial campaign of 1817. He compelled his nomination for the governorship and defeated his opponent, Peter B. Porter, one of his colleagues on the Canal Commission of 1810, by the decisive total of 43,310 votes against 1,479, a most extraordinary expression of public opinion and confidence. His inauguration took place on July 1st, 1817, and 3 days later, on the nation's chief holiday, he had the supreme satisfaction of breaking ground for the canal at Rome, then a promising village on the Mohawk River, formerly Fort Stanwix, amid great ceremony and jubilation. Thus, after 30 years from the date when his uncle George Clinton had urged the matter on the people, they finally, under the leadership of the nephew of the first governor, seriously began work. The little canals of the Western Inland Navigation Company, already referred to, were bought for $152,718. Extension was pushed vigorously, and by October 1819, the section between Rome and Utica, 15 miles, was open to navigation. In November of the same year, boats from the Hudson River passed into Lake Champlain. In 1820, the Erie reached the Seneca River, and it was confidently reported that it would be completed by 1823. In this, Clinton was, however, disappointed, and his opponents made the most of the delay. The control of the, for that day, vast patronage of the canal intensified political rancor and gave to politics a vehemence and virulence unprecedented. Clinton was charged with everything from bankrupting the state to plotting secession of New York from the Union. Although re-elected governor in 1820 over Tompkins, who now opposed the canal, his majority was so slender and his hold upon the people so precarious during the second term that he was compelled to retire from the contest for a third nomination in 1822. In April 1824, he was removed from the position of Canal Commissioner, which he had held continuously from the creation of the original commission in 1810, even while governor. This humiliation, believed at the time to be his political death blow, was accomplished by the overwhelming vote of the legislature, dominated by Van Buren, William L. Marcy, Silas Wright, and their associates, who had now become all-powerful as the Albany Regency. But after all, the people wanted the canal. The new regime was not apparently making satisfactory progress. Clinton took advantage of the situation, accepted a nomination for the governorship in 1824, and in the fall of that year, scarcely 6 months after his humiliation, he was elected by a vote of 103,452 against 87,093. With Clinton again in the harness, the canal work progressed at a lively pace, and again he experienced the satisfaction of presiding over the destinies of the state officially when on October 26, 1825, the first boat to make the trip through the finished Erie Canal left Buffalo, with the governor Stephen Van Rensselaer, Joshua Foreman, Chancellor Livingston, William L. Stone, and Thurlow Weed among those on board. Conspicuous by their absence were the members of the Albany Regency. The trip of the Seneca Chief, as the canal boat was named, was probably the most thoroughly celebrated event New York State has ever experienced. All along the route was a jubilant people, making it a continuous holiday parade. Ringing of bells and booming of cannon greeted it everywhere, and Clinton was the hero of the fortnight. On November 4th, the boat, escorted from Albany by a fleet of steamers, arrived in New York City, where civic, military, and naval parades followed, accompanied by the most extravagant demonstrations of popular enthusiasm. A memorial medal was struck by the municipal authorities, the face of which was subsequently adopted as the seal of the Canal Department. 2 kegs of water from Lake Erie had been brought along, and one of these was taken to Sandy Hook, and the water ceremoniously poured into the Atlantic Ocean, to render realistic one of the prophecies of Governor Morris, who had in the meantime passed away. The contents of the other keg were bottled as mementos, and one of these bottles was presented to Lafayette, who had a short time before been the guest of the city. An enthusiastic citizen had procured bottles of water from the Nile, the Ganges, the Indus, the Thames, the Seine, the Rhine, the Mississippi, the Columbia, the Orinoco, and the La Plata, all of which were also, with proper ceremony, emptied into the Atlantic, after those of the Erie had been mingled with its brine. This mingling of waters typified the ambitious faith of the builders that the commerce of the canal system was bound to commingle with and be enlarged by the commerce of all portions of the world. The festivities lasted until the night of November 7th, concluding with a grand ball. It is recorded that the news of the opening of the Grand Canal, as it was called for many years, was sent from Buffalo to Sandy Hook over 500 miles in 81 minutes by means of booming cannon placed at proper distances along the line. Our forebears, rejoicing over this great achievement in transportation, sought to hasten the news of the canal's opening by booming cannon as fast as sound travels. They little dreamed that in less than a century, Buffalo and New York would converse with the same ease and certainty as persons seated face to face.